Angelique had cursed me to be a vampire, so that my suffering would never end.
A vampire locked away for ages, Barnabas Collins breaks free and heads back to his family's old stomping grounds. But things aren't exactly peachy keen with his quirky descendants. They're in a bit of a pickle and need his fanged protection. Stick around until the end to see who becomes a vampire. Welcome to your daily dose of movie pill. Today, we'll be looking at a comedy horror film from 2012 titled Dark Shadows. Spoilers ahead, and let's dive right in. In 1760, the Collins family left Liverpool for Maine, New England, aiming to build up their family's fortune. They kicked off a booming fishing business, setting up a shop in Collinsport and putting up their fancy digs, Collinwood. Even as their wealth piled up, they made sure young Barnabas Collins knew one thing above all: family always comes first. Yeah, Barnabas, don't you ever forget that. Fast forward 15 years, Barnabas gets involved with Angelique, a family servant who's hiding the fact that she's a witch. When Angelique wants more than just a fling and Barnabas can't give it to her, things turn sour. In revenge, she uses her powers to off his parents. Suspecting foul play, Barnabas starts poking around in the dark arts while getting cozy with Josette Dupree. Angelique, hearing their lovey-dovey talks, gets all green-eyed monsters and magically convinces Josette to take a leap off a cliff. Barnabas couldn't save Josette in time and ended up taking a dive after her. Luckily, he survived the fall, but Angelique cursed him into becoming a vampire, ensuring his misery would never end. Then she riled up the locals, painting him as a monster, and they all ganged up on him, trapping him in a coffin buried deep in the woods. Fast forward to 1972. Victoria Winters hops on a train to Collinsport after spotting a job ad from the Collins family, who are in need of a governess. Well, at least he can rest in his coffin. Victoria isn't using her real name because she's running away from home and wants to keep her true identity hidden. So she picks Victoria from a poster she sees on the train. When she gets to the estate, Willie Loomis, the caretaker, welcomes her. He explains that the mansion, which used to have 100 servants, is now in rough shape, and only he and Mrs. Johnson are left. Right then, Elizabeth Collins Stoddard, the head of the family, shows up and has a private chat with Victoria to explain the job. After mentioning that there are only 7 people in the house, including the staff, and that parts of the mansion are gathering dust, Elizabeth starts firing questions at Victoria. Victoria replies with some sass, which Elizabeth seems to enjoy, leading her to hire Victoria. Later, at dinner, Victoria meets the rest of the group. There's Elizabeth's brother, Roger Collins, a bit of a slacker, Elizabeth's rebellious teenage daughter, Carolyn Stoddard, Roger's son, David Collins, who's been a bit off since his mom passed away when he was 5, and thinks he's seen her ghost, and Dr. Julia Hoffman, hired to sort out David's issue, though she seems to spend more time hitting the bottle than anything else. Yeah, I think David needs to find a better doctor. Victoria tries to comfort David by saying she believes in ghosts too, but Elizabeth isn't thrilled about it. Moments later, as Victoria gets ready for bed, she spots Josette's ghost in the hallway. Josette warns her, saying, "He's coming," before doing a weird dance around the chandelier. After repeating the warning, Josette collapses as if she's falling off the cliff and disappears. Meanwhile, in the forest, a construction crew building a McDonald's accidentally digs up Barnabas's coffin. When they open it, Barnabas is free and hungry. He apologizes for his hunger and proceeds to snack on every worker in sight. After that, he walks to the mansion, feeling a bit lost among the newfangled gadgets and modern clothes he sees along the way, still sporting some bloodstains. When he arrives, he finds Willie in the garden and hypnotizes him with his vampire mojo to spill the beans. He also asks Willie to help him clean up before they head inside. While he's trying to chat with the kids, Elizabeth interrupts, wanting to have a private chat. She shares her doubts about his identity and brushes off all the mystical stories about their family as just tall tales. After seeing a walking vampire, I don't think they are all tales. Barnabas proves he's legit by revealing a secret room even Elizabeth didn't know existed. He vows to revive the family's fortunes with the hidden treasures from that room. Elizabeth agrees to let him back into the fold, but with one condition: he can't spill the beans about being a vampire. The next morning over breakfast, she introduces him as Barnabas III, some distant relative from across the pond. The family talks shop, explaining how their once thriving fishing biz is now history, thanks to Angel Bay Seafood taking over. Just then, Victoria walks in, and Barnabas can't help but flirt a bit. She's a dead ringer for Josette. Back in town, Angelique is still alive, going by Angie Bouchard now, and she's the big boss as the founder and CEO of Angel Bay Seafood. When her crew tells her about the forest failure, she heads over there herself and is shocked to find the coffin wide open. Without wasting any time, she speeds over to Collinwood, where she and Elizabeth trade some insults before Barnabas whisks her away for a chat in private. Once they're alone, Angelique plants a kiss on him and spills the beans. She's turned Collinsport into her own Angel Bay and purposely wreck the Collins family with her fishing business. Wow, that's not so nice of you, Angelique. The townsfolk see Angelique as their big shot now, and poor Barnabas has become old news. So, even if he spills the beans, no one's gonna bat an eye. After Angelique jets off, Barnabas spills his worries to Elizabeth. She reminds him of his past resilience, how he never backed down, even when they had to lock him up. With the family needing him more than ever, she urges him to keep fighting. Pumped up by her pep talk, Barnabas dives headfirst into the mission of reviving the Collins legacy. By cashing in on some of the hidden treasure from the hidden stash, he hires a bunch of folks to spruce up the mansion and get their fishing biz back on track. Armed with an umbrella, shades, and a hat, he sneaks around during the day without getting fried by the sun. Though he struggles to find a comfy spot to crash, he has the servants bring back his old coffin. Once the business is booming again, Barnabas recruits fishermen by putting them under his vampire spell, convincing them to ditch Angelique's crew. During downtime, he keeps up with the times, learning about modern tech, and hangs out with Victoria whenever he can. Nice! Barnabas is really making use of his vampire curse. One evening, Roger catches Barnabas sneaking out of the secret room with some loot. Julia, sensing something fishy, invites him for a chat in her office. Using her hypnotic powers, she manages to get him to spill the beans. Afterward, she storms off to Elizabeth's to give her a piece of her mind for keeping secrets. Elizabeth talks to her about involving the cops by pointing out how intrigued Julia is by Barnabas, convincing her to let him stick around for more investigation. Later, Barnabas turns to Carolyn for advice on wooing modern women. Carolyn tells him to ditch the old-fashioned vibes and hang out with the cool crowd. Taking her advice, Barnabas ends up chilling with some hippies in the forest, swapping stories and toking up. After getting some relationship advice from the girls about love over money, Barnabas ends up offing them all to satisfy his cravings. The next day, Julia tries out blood transfusions to see if they can cure his vampirism. When Barnabas compliments her, Julia reminds him of doctor-patient confidentiality, but then gets a bit flirty. Meanwhile, Victoria and Barnabas keep hanging out, chatting about all things supernatural. While the Collins business starts picking up again, Angelique is fuming. Even though Angel Bay still controls most of the fishing scene, she's hell-bent on ruining the Collins family, following in her grandma's footsteps. You get what you deserve, Angelique. She calls Barnabas for a chat and tries to persuade him to sell his company to hers, but he turns her down flat. Angelique insists all she wants is love and threatens to harm Victoria if he doesn't comply. Reluctantly, Barnabas gives in, and they end up getting frisky in the office, wrecking the place in the process. Feeling guilty afterward, Barnabas tells Angelique he can't be with her. In retaliation, she vows to ruin him. Meanwhile, Barnabas keeps up with his blood transfusions from Julia, while Victoria starts having unsettling dreams about seeing Josette's ghost as a kid, a memory that landed her in a loony bin back then. Yeah, it's a bit scary to see ghosts, even as an adult. When she wakes up, Josette's ghost pays her another visit, asking for assistance before vanishing. At breakfast, Barnabas suggests throwing a big bash to remind everyone who's boss in town. Carolyn, though, schools him on modern parties, saying people prefer happenings these days. On the night of the bash, she realizes Barnabas wasn't joking about arranging anything she mentioned. Surprise, surprise, Alice Cooper is playing live at their party. Not being a big fan of the music, Barnabas bails for a walk around the house. There, he finds David holding down the coat room fort instead of the regular staff because his dad asked him to step in and keep out unwanted guests. I don't think that'll be much help for unwanted guests. Barnabas shoos David away and decides to play detective, scaling the outside wall to peek through the window. There, he catches Roger getting cozy with a staff member. Later, he meets up with Veronica on a balcony. She confesses she knows he's sweet on her and feels like she can spill her guts to him. Veronica admits she's always felt drawn to Collinswood and begins pouring out her heart. When Barnabas leans in for a kiss, she hesitates. It's the first time someone she cares about feels the same way about her. She starts to spill her life story, revealing her tough time in the loony bin, where she endured endless painful treatments in an attempt to fix her. That was a very awkward rejection of a kiss. But she never lost her fighting spirit, and one day she made a daring escape through a window. With no plan, she followed Josette's guidance to a newspaper ad for a governess job, and it felt like fate. Finding comfort at Collinswood, she also finds herself falling for Barnabas, a feeling she finally acts on by giving him a kiss. Unfortunately, Angelique walks in on them during the party and loses it. The next day, Barnabas goes to Julia to speed up his transformation back into a human so he can be with Victoria, only to catch her in the act of transfusing his vampire blood into her own body. I certainly didn't expect that move from Julia. She couldn't care less about Barnabas turning human. All she wants is to make herself immortal. As payback for breaking the family's trust, she sinks her fangs into Victoria, accidentally accidentally killing her. Shocked by her own transformation, she doesn't realize her growing fangs until Barnabas points it out. He then asks Willie to help him dump her body in the middle of the sea with a brick. Later, he catches Roger snooping around the secret treasure room. Barnabas gives him a choice: step up as a dad to David or take some cash and disappear forever. Roger chooses the money, breaking David's heart. As the devastated kid rushes off to his room, he narrowly avoids a disco ball Willie is taking down from the ceiling. Barnabas uses his super speed to save him, but gets caught in the sunlight, which starts burning him alive. Now that the whole family's clued in, David and Victoria bolt from him, totally grossed out. Feeling desperate, Barnabas turns to Angelique, hoping she'll lift the curse. Instead, she strong-arms him into confessing he offed Julia. Then, she lays down the law. They either team up as partners and lovers to run the fishing empire, or she'll toss him back in the coffin. Refusing to play her game, Barnabas tells her where she can shove it and tries to bail. That proposition doesn't sound bad when you think about it. I would have taken it for sure. But surprise! Angelique's goons are waiting outside with a coffin. They slam him in, chain it shut, and toss it in a van, heading straight for the cemetery. Before they split, Angelique casts a spell, blowing up the Collins Company building. The coffin ends up dumped in a mausoleum, only for David to stumble upon it moments later. He found out about Barnabas being in trouble because his mom's ghost clued him in. Meanwhile, back in town, everyone's watching as the cops and firefighters deal with the fire. Angelique rolls up and blasts a recording of Barnabas admitting he knocked off Julia, stirring up trouble against the Collins family. Before long, an angry mob, along with the cops and Angelique, swarm Collinswood just as Barnabas shows up. He's ready to come clean if they promise not to hurt his family, but he insists they take Angelique down too. The sheriff takes a shot at Barnabas, but it's useless. So Barnabas sinks his teeth into Angelique, revealing her true monstrous form. With the bystanders gone, Barnabas gears up for a showdown with Angelique, packing Elizabeth's shotgun and getting an unexpected hand from Carolyn, who turns out to be a werewolf. But even with their combined efforts, they're no match for Angelique's witchy powers, especially when she puts a spell on the house itself, turning it against its own family. As Angelique tortures them, she spills the beans, confessing to offing Barnabas's folks, David's mom, and even arranging for Carolyn to get bitten by a werewolf when she was just a baby. Turns out, she's been the source of the family's misery all along. David barges in and sets his mom's ghost on Angelique, sending her flying across the room. She crashes into the chandelier, bringing it crashing down and squashing her. With the flames raging, the family scrambles to escape. Barnabas shares a parting word with Angelique as she meets her end, but her heart crumbles to dust. Despite searching, Barnabas can't find Victoria anywhere. David's mom reveals that she's at the cliff's edge. As the family watches the house crumble, Barnabas races to stop Victoria from jumping, but she won't listen. She's human, basking in the light, while Barnabas is forever bound to the shadows. They just can't be together. The gloomy thought drives Victoria to take the plunge off the cliff. Like before, Barnabas dives after her, but this time he sinks his teeth into her, turning her into a vampire before she hits the ground. Now, both immortal, they can stay together forever. They seal the deal with a kiss. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the ocean, Julian's body stirs. Her eyes snap open, revealing she's also been turned into a vampire. From their humble beginnings in Liverpool to the eerie confines of Collinwood, we've uncovered secrets, scandals, and a fair share of spooky encounters. I rate this movie a 7 out of 10. Comment down below what you would rate it. Looks like this movie pill is starting to wear off. But don't worry, there's always more where that came from. Tap here to keep the effects going with this next movie, because who can stop at just one? And while you're at it, don't forget to like and subscribe, because your next movie dose is just a click away.